Not long ago, I argued that the Beatles likely would never have reunited, even if George Harrison and John Lennon had lived. At the core of my reasoning is the belief that by the time the band broke up, each member had developed their own distinct sense of what good music meant, a divide that only deepened during their respective solo careers. Because of this, the notion that the four of them could ever come back together with a shared creative vision seems overly optimistic. During the years when both Lennon and Harrison were still alive, they were often asked about the possibility of a reunion. While they generally avoided giving definitive answers, Harrison once expressed a view that aligned closely with my perspective. He acknowledged that a reunion would only be possible if they could all agree on the kind of music they wanted to create together. He noted that they had all become deeply involved in their own lives, and that many years had passed since the band had split. While he didn't entirely dismiss the possibility of reuniting, he made it clear that it would only be worth doing for musical reasons, not because of outside pressure or public demand. The central issue within the Beatles, even beyond their personal conflicts, was that music had always been the unifying force. They were passionate about their craft and always in pursuit of the next great song. But over time, their musical ideals began to diverge, and this growing divide ultimately led to the band's dissolution. For a reunion to be truly viable, they would have needed to find common ground once again in terms of musical direction. However, judging by their later individual projects, it's clear they continued to evolve in very different ways, each with a unique vision of what made music meaningful. So, to reach a point where they could reunite for the sake of music, as Harrison once put it, there would have needed to be significant changes in their individual mindsets. This brings up an interesting question. What era of the Beatles did George Harrison value most? When asked about his favourite albums from their discography, he responded that he didn't feel particularly attached to or against any specific record. Instead, he remembered the experience as a whole rather than focusing on certain phases. Still, he mentioned having fond memories of Rubber Soul and Revolver, appreciating how each album represented growth. On the other hand, he singled out Yellow Submarine as one he didn't think highly of. If you were to ask each of the Beatles which albums they identified with most and which they liked the least, their answers would likely all differ. And perhaps that's the clearest sign of all that a reunion, unless built on shared musical values, was always unlikely.